where, I don't know when you have to store them or something.
Yeah.
There's something else that starts later. We have to say that.
So sorry.
Oh, let me-
Maybe she dropped you.
No, she was out of town.
Oh, okay.
Oops, I was supposed to. For this packet.
Only the best here.
I like mine red.
There's been some, so you're around the room. Right there.
Yes, me.
Did you already do the pledge and all? Or do we
No.
do that? Okay.
All right, for a quorum.
All right. Let's call the meeting to order for August 26th. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right. So prior minutes, do we have any questions or concerns about the minutes from, is it February? There another July. Okay, I was gonna say. I got it. You printed it. This says February at the top. All right. We can come back to that, so that's fine, not a problem. We'll just come back to it. I'm gonna open the public hearing for the preliminary of 2026 budget. Are there any public comments? All right, well, and do we let Mike go before I close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, I usually have time to kind of walk through points that might work with his forecast
All right,
and explanation of things.
all right. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Debbie. Take it.
Well, why don't we,
We can start.
yeah, why don't we do that?
For one. Yeah, we've had to take a little bit of strategy this year. We have to do some legislation that passed this year. So I'm gonna start really with just a high level recap. Probably one of the active sessions I had gone through and I've been doing it a long time. Debbie's been doing it a long time. It was quite the session. I said, started like a train. It didn't feel like anything could slow it down and finish. When they got through, got Senate Bill 1 together, it never went to committee, went straight through the House and then the Senate and right to the governor's office signed. And there wasn't much anybody could say to kind of change the direction of it. But just kind of recap, Debbie, jump in here if you have something that's different than my perception of it. But we had Senate Bill 1 that came out in its original form. That was the governor's. He ran on a campaign that he was going to roll back taxes. And it was pretty significant. And it wasn't just harming townships or counties. I mean, it was a pretty big swipe of property tax, which would affect all local government. There was no replacement revenue in that model. So in other words, there's no way to make up what would otherwise be lost. Then the senators, I know, were working with the governor's office trying to lessen the impact of that because they too thought that might be. And so there was lots of interaction going on at that time, and their solution wasn't necessarily to roll back taxes. Their solution was to limit future taxes. And they were going to give us 0% levy growth in our first year, 1% in 27, 2% in 28, and then we go back to a 6-year non-farm personal income tax model. And so, and that too had no replacement revenue. There was no way to go back and ever catch up from from the dollars that would not be collected. On the House side, Representative Thompson, Chair House Ways and Means, had spent a lot of time thinking about property tax reform. And they'd come up with a bill that was pretty complicated in how it dealt with property tax. But it didn't stop at property tax. There's significant reform with local option income tax. And this, Tim, you're going to hear this twice. So maybe a little different version because there's townships are affected a little bit different here that we talk about some things, capital projects. But so in his bill, there's a pretty steep cut. And he was really eroding the tax model. And or though he then put the ability to adopt more local option income tax into that and would help most of the counties. Not everyone would benefit from the higher rate. Most of the counties would benefit from it if they so choose. But Dave pointed out a while ago, you know, they kind of pushed it down to local level to make that decision. And so, but as I've said to all my clients, I said, except schools have no ability to make up some of the loss. It's best to have a tool in the toolbox to be able to make it up. If they have no tool at all, at least you have a fighting chance in the future. They could have just cut it and with no makeup. But really what happened, the big piece is what happened. And it's pretty complicated. It's a pretty complicated bill. People struggle to explain it. Even legislators didn't understand all the complexities of this. But right now we have a supplemental homestead deduction. It's at 37.5%. Between now and 2031, that is going to increase to 66.7%. And so essentially, I use a $300,000 house. A $300,000 house in year 2031 will only be paying on $100,000 assessed valuation. So a third house is full. And so in addition to that, and this is where they got the governor across the finish line, because he was threatening special sessions because he didn't feel like the cuts were deep enough. And in my opinion, how they got it over the finish line was they then included in the Thompson's bill a new property tax credit, different than circuit breaker. This is credit, and it's applied after the tax bill. So you apply these new deductions and you calculate the tax bill, but at the end of that calculation, you subtract either 10% or $300. And again, on a $300,000 house, a 1% cap is $3,000. So max that home's going to pay is $3,000. But so they would have a $3,000 tax liability normally, maximum. But then this $300 credit applies to it. So now that's how they got essentially below the 1% cap. So we've always had the 1% cap, and now we're actually below the cap because of this 10% or $300. And so that's new, and that credit is a pure loss. Especially in 26, there is potential in future lists to try and make up for that loss. But right now in 26, this new credit will get put in place, and it is a pure loss for revenue to all units. And so 26 though, the supplemental homestead deduction, not changing in time. It's really just going from 37.5% to 40% this first year, but from there on, it's about 6% a year. It's increasing. And they didn't stop there. They said, all right, we're going to put a new credit in, or new deduction in for 4% or the 2% category. And that's rental property, essentially, and farmers. And farmers did pretty well this year. So they have a new deduction that we've never had. It's going to start at 6% in 26. It's going to go to 33% by 2031. And so that's more assessed valuation that's going to be lost over time. And they didn't stop there. They also eliminated business personal property, 2 million or below, starting in 27. It was originally scheduled to be $1 million or below in 26, but they realized they didn't have enough time to do that because everybody had filed personal property returns. Mechanics just weren't going to work, so they amended it, saying in 2027, any business with $2 million or less of personal property will not have to report And in addition to that, we're doing away with what's called the 30% floor. So where they would depreciate down to 30% and then stop before. Now, if a business puts in new personal property, that new piece of equipment can be depreciated all the way down to zero over time. So, you know, I've used this comment for many, many years. This isn't, I'm sorry, Marilyn.
Assessment year 26, payable
Oh.
27.
Hey, 127, per.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Marilyn, you're right. I meant payable in 27. Our net AV in 27 will go down as a result of that. Not in 2026, yeah, did not affect that. Now, so, you've all probably heard me say this over the years. This wasn't my original quote, but the only fair tax is the one someone else pays. And that's what we keep moving it around. Let the responsibility of it is. Homeowners got hit really hard in the last 2 years because assessments were compounding at 20%. You know, just really big hits, obviously, got raised the circuit breaker limits. But we're really kind of moving stuff to income tax. They're really moving off property tax to income tax. And so if you don't have property and you have a lot of income, you hate this idea. But if you have a lot of property and very little income, you love this idea. And so that's the whole fairness question, right? And this was a quote in the IBJ, not my quote. And I love this quote, whoever thought this. Some young person, I think you've already heard me say this. Some young person had discovered that congratulations, baby boomers. You own all the real estate and you just got your property taxes lowered. And you raise my income tax, now making it even harder for me to buy a home. Property values are higher, they can't afford it, now we're taking more income from those younger folks and just made it. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I went, aha, there's a young person that's a pretty good shot at what just happened. And so now some of us will be right in the middle, right? So your property taxes might go down, your income tax is going to go up, or you somewhere, who knows how you're going to be affected exactly. So just lots of things happening with the assessed valuation. Marilyn, jump in here, but what we saw in 26, we still actually saw quite a bit of AV growth in most places, not everywhere, but we still saw AV growth, mostly due to the adjustment of commercial assessments. Maryland was the last time commercial property had been adjusted. Was it 4 years? The tables? Was it more than that? So, yeah. So it doesn't seem right though, you know, that here we trend residential every year, but on commercial, it's like we got the old cyclical reassessments in. So, yeah.
They don't.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, yeah, and there's some weird things obviously with the pandemic in there, but it's interesting, Marion County as a whole, shocking. Almost went up 9% as a whole as a county. On that was huge, I thought, for Marion County. That's way more than Hampton County. I mean, that's huge. So you're seeing all kinds of results across the state. I was on with policy analytics today. They had one county that's up over 20%. The value, the assessment's up. So producing all kinds of wild results across the state. I would say this, and I'm gonna get into your numbers. Hamilton County has a strong tax base and we have a strong income base. If we can't weather this, nobody's gonna weather it. And there are going to be a lot of units hit the wall way before we do. And so I hate to say that, but that will cause the pendulum to swing. It's going to take some units to fail under this model before they start to react to that. I personally think what they might be shocked by at the state level is not 26, because it's still going to be a rate conversation, a property tax rate conversation. I think they're gonna be shocked by how quickly tax rates go up starting in 27. Because like these commercial values, they're not going to, rental property, it's not going to get adjusted next year, but they're gonna get a new 6% deduction. So although their taxes are probably going up this next year, even with the 6%, next year they'll go down because they won't be adjusted and they'll get a new 6% each year. And so farmers did real well. They got their capitalization rate lowered and their farm ground per acre probably decreased about 7%. And then they also got the 6% deduction. So you get out in a rural community, you know, that relies on farm ground, they're gonna take a big hit in excess valuation this year. That was effective for 25, paid 26. So just lots of things. I mean, it was just a bizarre session. For the township, Debbie could probably speak to this much better than I can, because she was daily involved with this conversation about townships have too much money. And that born the CIP plan, capital improvement plan. And so initially, when they started looking at townships and the fund balances, they included bond proceeds, they included restricted funds, and really we're trying to get access to those dollars for roads. But now the townships are going to be required to adopt a capital plan. We've had to do it once before, but it was kind of a one-time thing and it kind of went away. But this time, there's a little more meat to it and penalties to it if you don't do it, that they can actually do some things to you if you don't lose this capital. And I actually have more information as of today. So I have some fresh information to share. So it's to say the least been very clunky trying to get through this capital projects improvement plan, in that we were supposed to go to the county with it at the first meeting in September, first meeting in August. Well, that was August 6th. How do you take a plan to the county council for review when the plans haven't even been reviewed by the township? And so the DLGF has come out on a position on that saying, we're not going to take exception to that. If it didn't get done, there's no penalty for that. There's no penalty that they're aware of for not doing that step. As of today, I met with Ryan Burke, the field rep, to review balances and so forth. I said, so Ryan, what's the position of the DLGF on advertising? Now, to be safe, we have done this, okay? But we originally had everything moved up because of these plans, because we wanted to have the public hearing and adoption all before September 30th, so we can get through this process. But they're taking the position, all they care about, the DLGF, all they care about is the CIP plan has an adoption date before September 30th. They're not taking issue with the public hearing or an advertisement. But State Board of Accounts did. So no penalty on the DLGF side. You could get an audit exception if you didn't advertise on the State Board of Accounts side. That's usually just kind of, you should have advertised. Well, I'm sure they'll clean this up in the next session. I like what that position is because I questioned whether it had to be advertised. Schools don't have to advertise their capital projects plan. They just upload them into Gateway and they're part of the budget process. They have a public hearing with their budget and they have the adoption. And it kind of goes through Gateway for schools. They don't advertise separate. So needless to say, there was not a lot of guidance that came along with this. And so everybody was trying to do the best they could with this. And even the templates that came out from the state didn't work correctly when they first started coming out. And so I think they do have that piece done. This is a lead into our budget, Delaware Township. It was my recommendation to Debbie is, listen, we got to do this capital improvement plan. But, are they going to take another swipe? So I'm going to try to get these balances because there's some rumbling saying, no, townships are tying this money up. Will they take another swipe out of this next session? And my recommendation is let's appropriate all the cash. If they do that, you're prepped and ready and appropriated to spend it. You're not having to wait for anything. And it also basically in the capital plan that basically shows zero cash balance at the end of 26. If we, we will simply de-appropriate it and adopt it again in the next year's plan. And so, and it's also been my recommendation to include things in 27 and 28, even if we can't fund them. It produces a negative number. That just shows you we've got way more needs than what we save in cash. You're just penalizing us for being conservative. So
Right.
that, go ahead, Marilyn. Did you?
No, we just said, right.
Okay, so this year's budget ties up all your cash, and it's really in the township fund or excuse me, township fund and the rating fund, the votes. The capital improvement plan is supposed to also reflect the capital expenditures for fire, but it doesn't have the impact because it's separate, it's restricted. And of course, you guys don't do what you need. But a lot of townships do deal with that. But they really then just focused on the unrestricted funds. In your case, that really means your general fund and so we have put together a budget that will, should something change at the state house, you can make the decision not to spend it, or you can make the decision to spend it very quickly if you want to, if that makes sense. So, Debbie, you want to touch on the budget then, let me hit some of the highlights of the fiscal plan,
Trying to get to
the detail.
the rainy.
Okay, yeah, that is on page 5, yeah. Page 5 of the fiscal plan, if we spend all the 75,000, that's it. We'd have 287,000 this year. And if we appropriate 250, that leaves $37,000. That's not obligated. So when we do the form, it's going to try to take 30% of that number, which is $90,000. It's going to put it on that form as available to transfer to the road.
Just so everybody understands, I'm all up to speed on the road fund. We have to establish a road fund, townships do. And then the way the bill started was everything but 15% of your budget that is remaining at the end of the year had to go to the road fund, which basically would wipe everybody clean. So you can have money set aside for your ensuing budget, your debts, things like that. And then they were going to take 85% essentially of what was left. So ITA lobbied hard against it, and we actually lobbied for the CIP because we maintain that if we're saving money for a specific reason, then isn't the most important thing that we disclose that to the taxpayer and be able to continue to project forward for capital projects. Well, they agreed with the CIP and we got the percentage, how it was calculated, changed. So like Mike said, your remaining balance after you do the formula, 30% of that has to go in the road fund. And then the road fund is set aside to cooperatively do infrastructure projects with either the city or the county.
I know
So
I
they've
want our
put all the-
$9,000 to go for it.
Right? That pothole, that one.
Yeah.
So they basically put all the townships into the road business because their road fund is short big time. And they were looking for some way to make up the difference. And they saw townships as the way to make up their problem with their road funding. And so,
And it originally included fire and all the other funds too.
oh yeah, it did. We
At least the
negotiated
fire-
like crazy.
Yeah,
to get that
fire,
out.
you know,
It was nuts. I mean, the way that it started, I mean, it's hard enough as it is, to deal with, but the way that bill started, it was atrocious. But I even asked Jeff Bellamy, can we do this, or did I ask you if we could go retroactive? Like, okay, we just did all these interlocals for all this infrastructure. Can we get credit
Yeah,
for what we put in? I guess not, but I just find it interesting that we did ours.
I think the capital improvement. It's just that because the DLGF had so many things on their plate as a result of the session, the information came out late. It wasn't real clear guidance on if you had to have a public hearing, if you had to. Yeah,
From 2019 statute. And that was identified. Everybody told us this old language is going to trip people up, having to take it to the county council, that kind of thing. And sure enough, it kind of went haywire, but yeah.
so the good news is, that I like this, the good news is that the DLGF's only position, as long as there is an adoption date before September 30th, that's good news. I think it's
We will
good.
be preparing a CIP for this board to consider and adopt. Are we doing it the next meeting? Okay, so the adoption, the budget adoption will also
And
have
it's
this.
also my understanding, they aren't focusing so much on the front page, they're just making sure that even if it's zero, they want you to put zero on. It produces a hash mark, but they want to know if somebody actually looked at the plan and did something with it. And so, like, to me, the most important part is the need, which is in what we're saying we're going to spend it on, not so much that front page.
But nobody's gonna look at that except taxpayers that are interested.
Yeah.
You'll look up our CIPs, won't you?
David likes numbers.
So with that, you also have a copy of the township budget form 1. And at our last meeting, we went over some preliminary figures. Those have been worked into what you see here. And as the biggest changes are what Mike noted, that we are appropriating more cash than maybe we typically would, but we are looking to possibly get some projects done that we've been saving for or know we needed rainy day funds for, like new roof on this building. Things like this that we might be able to consider, or we continue to save it for other projects.
Taking enough cash that we get from property tax, selling the property tax. General fund, we're using pretty much, and we're not relying on property. But I think you gotta think about what's the right amount of cash balance we should be leaving. Especially with this whole lit thing coming up. We haven't talked about that in great detail yet either, but go ahead through your budget stuff.
Oh, well, I'm just putting it in front of you. And I guess I would open it up for your questions or comments.
If you wanted to see a comparison year by year, and by the way, tonight is no action. You have lots of time to review all this, so it's not like you have to react to this tonight. This is pure information as a public hearing. But if you go to the page, starting on page 30, you can see a line by line comparison of last year's budget and this year's budget. But again, the most notable is the very last bottom of the page and under 2026, we see the capital budget going from 40,000 to 800. Yeah. Otherwise, the budget's pretty flat for the most part.
We tried, didn't we?
Sure that.
We were pinching here and pinching this.
See, but that's what's so frustrating, right? Here you're being good stewards by doing it, and we're getting penalties for having it.
Well, are there things, I mean, even leaving like $37,000 in that fund, is that reasonable, or you think should we try to spend it?
Look at that again too, because I don't think
Infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't even know that you have to transfer, or is it just eligible to transfer? You're saying,
You have to do the resolution this year to establish the fund.
yes. Now, have we done that here either? Okay, you're gonna do it at the adoption date, with the adoption. Some have, I heard Tom's Web is already.
It's pretty.
It's already in there.
They put it on there.
So even if there's zero in there, they still want you to establish the road fund.
So the 800,000 is because we took out the bond and everything to fight and spend on this, or what is the 800,000 number for?
That's just cash that's appropriated and available to be spent.
Oh, okay.
And it's very possible the DLGF will get done with it, but hey, you don't have enough money for that, we're gonna cut the budget. We're gonna cut that back, but that was intentional to tie in and position you to be flexible. Flexible meaning you can react quickly if you start to see something bad happen. Some of the other highlights, so this session, 4% levy growth is what they're allowing. It's just, in other words, your maximum levies are going at 4%. This was a disappointing piece of news. Go to page 28. Local option income tax and did not do well. This is a certified number now. And if you look at 2026 and come across, you see the 269 billion. That the total county lid only increased 2.7%. That is not good for him. That should have been higher than that. I'm going to give you some counties around us as an example. It was over 11% in Hancock County. It was 4.5% in Johnson County. It was over 5% in Marion County. And it was over 5% it was 6% in Madison County. I have emailed the Department of Revenue and asked, we're not saying this is wrong, but on the surface, how could Hamilton County only be up 2.7%? And all of the surrounding counties around us are up.
That's
As east. I mean, if we didn't grow another person, just incomes alone, you'd think we'd go 2.7%. So I don't have the answer to that. That'll take a while to peel that apart, but that's what we have to work with. We got disappointing news there. So we're gonna lose money to the new credit. We got bad lit numbers. And we're getting a 4% increase in their levy. So it's tightening up is the point. We do have the certified assessed valuation. Nothing shocking here. But if you go to page 9, the township as a whole went up 1.62%. So so we're going to see a tax increase on the rate this next year, because when your levy goes up 4% and your assessed valuation goes up 1.62%, if they were equal, there'd be no rate increase. But with this, it's not going to increase a lot, but it is going to increase. The unincorporated area actually went down 0.63%. And so some of that was due to some annexation effects. And so on the other hand of that, your contract will go down because your contract's based on your portion of the pie. Fall Creek unincorporated went up 9.24, and Fishers as a whole went up 4.07%. So that gives you some idea on what that is. And that included the commercial values being adjusted. So although a lot of that commercial too is in TIF and Fishers, so those audits in TIF areas. So anyway, those are kind of some of the big picture highlights, and And this budget looks different than others. It is a reaction to what's happened down at the State House. In most cases, I've told them, you don't need to take a knee-jerk reaction to what happened. But for townships, we kind of did, because we had to position ourselves to be ready with this, protecting the cash with the capital projects plan. And so that helps us kind of protect that. So that piece is how we are doing them. But it was not a friendly session. And I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about lit this next session again. So let me talk to you about local option income tax. Right now in Hampton County, we have a rate of 1.1. 1% is what's called expenditure rate, and 0.1% goes to basically the E911 system to operate the E911 system across the county. That money all goes to the county. The 1% is allocated to townships, libraries, the cities and towns in the county. And whatever's collected is prorated basically essentially on property tax. And so if you go to this is sort of page 26. We represent 0.3% of that pie. And so here's something interesting, Debbie. For the first time, I've talked about this for 20 years. Lake Township's portion finally dropped.
How about that?
It went from,
We've been sitting around waiting for that.
it was almost 4 million in 24. And in 2026, it's 1.6 million. So that old debt is finally paying off, causing their levy to go down, and they're losing that portion of the pie. Adams Township went away. So here's the concern then for me. So the county now will be, right now we operate under what's called a lit council. And the lit council is made up on population based of each city and town and the county. And you would think the county has a large vote. They actually have a very small vote in. They only represent about 6.9% of the lit vote. So you think about the unincorporated areas, there's not many people out there. So the cities really have had control, if you got two big ones together, decide whether they want the rate to go up or down. But in the new model, starting in 2027, between July 1, 2027 and October 1st, 2027, the county now will be responsible for adopting their own lit rate for the county. They will be responsible for adopting a lit rate for the townships, and they will be responsible for adopting a lit rate for the libraries. And then the cities and towns will be responsible for adopting their own lit rate, much different than the models before. And so that will get very political. Right now, the townships under this year represent 0.29%. The townships are going to want to lobby for 0.05, but it's going to be hard to get them there. And the model of distribution is no longer going to be based on levy, it is going to be based on population. And so that is a big change in 2028. And so the county can adopt up to 1.2% for themselves, and they won't even come close to that. They won't even get it to 0.5 on their rate. The cities and towns might all have different rates, depending on their needs. And so that's likely to happen, because what 1% collects in Carmel is not going to be the same 1% that's collected in Noblesville. Now in Fishers, this is probably a better model for them, because we've been shorted so much over the years because of the whole property tax calculation. And so they got some legislation through to fix most of that. But in the future, it's actually probably a better thing for Fishers to be able to adopt their own rate, because it will come back directly to Fishers. But where the townships are exposed is it's totally up to the county to adopt a rate for the townships. And that rate then, whatever's collected, will be distributed by population. So that I anticipate is going to get a lot of conversation this next session because it's not a perfect system what they've got going into 28. So we're gonna live in the old system for 2026 and 27. In 28, we go to this new real-time approach. And the county council is gonna have to make that decision in July of 27, or to be effective January 1, 28. So it, that I anticipate more conversation. So 26, you know, kind of know what 26 looks like, right? So it's there's just a lot of question marks there. But David, going to your comment earlier, as the assessed valuation starts to bring on all the new deductions, that tax base is going to erode. But if levies keep going up 4%, tax rates are going to go up. So.
Are there any questions? Yes, we can
Yeah,
ask
we-
that, right?
This is a public hearing.
Oh.
Yes, we are.
Mike, how does the state calculate what Fisher, income tax rate? How are they going to do that with different zip codes?
I 100% agree on concern. They claim they're going to use the GIS system. I have lobbied, not lobbied literally, but I have suggested that we need taxpayers to report the taxing district they live in on their return, not just the county. Right now, you report the county. And you may think, oh, we can't do that, nobody's gonna know. Well, that's how we do excise tax now. When you go to the license branch, you tell them where you live, and then they put you in the district in which you live. Why can't we do that with income tax? And then there's no question about where that person lives, and it comes back to the right place. I'm not a big fan of GIS because some are good systems, some are bad systems. And to your point, we got multiple zip codes. How are they going to keep up with annexations to know they got the right maps to capture all that lid? I heard another good idea actually that I liked a lot from David Bodar just the other days. Lobbying maybe to put the parcel number on there. Now, that may sound crazy, but if you put your address in there and it pops up in the apartment, it's a parcel number. It doesn't matter if it's an apartment, it's the parcel number. They put it on there, then it would get in the right tax district for distribution. Kind of like that.
Their parcel.
Well, you have to have a system like you put your address in, so that
Oh.
address is this parcel number. So that would take some work. I like that. Would be very accurate if they could get a system to do that. At a minimum, I think they should take my suggestion, like, why would you do it any different than excise tax? That's how we do it now. Been doing it that way for years and years and years.
Mike,
Yes,
I have seen so many mistakes with people putting that on excise though, back in the day when we used to do, RVs and trailers and stuff. They never got that information right.
I totally agree. I witnessed that over the years. But they could pretty easily come up with a system, even at the license branch or even for the accountants, say, put your address in and say, is that where you live? The accountant would go, okay, you're in the city. Or you're not in the city. And so I think in today's technology, they can make that pretty easy with a map.
Office your personal and information there, but somehow we have to get it more, user friendly. But I wouldn't rely on taxpayer.
No, but it's just that they're gonna know their address. They go on the return, they plug it into the database instead, put your address in, it pops up the taxing district 4.
That's the best way to go.
So anyway, yeah, the other way was never perfect, but in my opinion, it's still better than GIS.
Yeah.
Because you got people that may use a post office box on their,
Right.
so.
Everybody has a physical address, they have to, a physical location address. I mean, they may have a PO box for a mailing, but they have to have a physical location address.
Right. But
Well, yeah, but, well, I guess, yeah, I mean, not everybody, but even apartments, that's the hard part. Apartments addresses don't come up on our system.
well, like I said, I don't, it's not a perfect system. I like the park, if we could get into the parcel, if we could really get a system that would do that, that'd be my favorite. But if you can't get to that, then report where you live. And then last thing, GIS, I'm just not a big fan of GIS. So that's kind of the,
And that's,
a little longer than normal, but this was, and it still is, I mean, this has been a stressful year.
I hear you.
Any other public comments? None, I will close the public hearing. On to the capital improvement plan. Thank you so much, Mike. That was excellent.
and I
Thank you, Mike.
think on the CID, it's just what I already said. So I think we kind of finished
All
that.
right,
He's inside the public hearing.
okay, great. Then we will move to the project first.
Well, you can probably see that they've started doing some things around here. It's kind of a big mess and the drywall in the community center is almost put back except for the ballroom. But when you walk through the rest of the building, they were so fast. I can't believe how fast they can do that. But you know, they had to do that flood cut throughout the building, about 2 feet or so. So they've got that all put back and moving right along with the community center, the park, they are moving quickly on it as well. They've got the restroom blocked up. You saw that. Oh, great. So that's moving along great. You can see that they've started moving dirt here on the west side of this building for the expansion. So it's hopping. It's hopping.
Yeah.
They should start the trail connector here later this month.
Oh, good.
Yeah, by the end of the month, they should start.
We've only done
Thanks.
it for a week.
That's
Not doing
right.
that.
I guess they better get going.
That's they better.
It's
Oh,
probably
yeah.
not gonna happen in August. Okay, so it's gonna they're gonna start in September.
Well, when we were here, what was it, July 23rd, they were like in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I know I had a neighbor that lives here on 131st Street. He's like, what are all those spots in my yard for? I'm like,
Uh-oh. Come in.
no. I'm like, he's a terrible yard. I'm like, I wanted to say, well, we show him less tomorrow. But I didn't.
So you explained to what's going on.
Yeah, I did. I said, if you had any questions, call the Department of Public Works, because they have all the plans.
Yeah.
You know, like where is the sidewalks?
Very good.
The swing bridge on the river.
Only that they set consider like an outline consideration for the plat. That's the biggest communication in weeks. So it's plugging along.
Do they have an open? To the public?
They are saying, I think they said November,
Oh, okay.
but I'm trying to keep track in my head of the
Yeah,
different start and dates of different pieces, so.
Yeah, no
forgive me.
problem.
Yeah,
We won't hold you to it.
okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Is that something you can put a name on?
Well, Clay is doing the research on the river. And the use of the river by the Indian tribes at the time. So they are working to figure out historically if we should name or say or do something. Is that what you?
Yes.
Yep.
More to come.
Wonderful.
See, I was thinking about Chase Bank Bridge, you know, they give some corporate sponsorship dollars in it. Andy Moore Bridge.
Old business? You want to do that?
The ones that
next time?
or you want me to? You want to do it?
We can do it next time because we'll have new one here. Or they have all your signatures. Okay, let's do that. Any new business? Next meeting is the 9th, right? September 9th. And I will sign up to be late. I have 2 alarms set on my phone. I put it on silent all day for work and I just was busy doing dinner, so I apologize. So motion to adjourn?
I mean, like,
All right. Motion carries, so we will see you on the 9th.
thank you for being present today.
Hey, no problem. Got your cover there.
You back?
Oh, we're.
Yeah, I'll get it for you. I'll have it next time if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect.